Hey folks, my name's Rene Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Bootser. Black Hand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Hey folks, my name's Rene Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored. Welcome back to another banging episode. This is a humdinger, folks. It's about a topic that everybody asks about all the time. But I'm not really an expert in the topic. I had my experiences with this topic, but I think one of the experts in this field is Cricket from Prison Chronicles. He's got some really interesting videos on his channel. In fact, I'm going to use a small clip of his here, but we want to give credit to his channel because this guy was from the Arizona Mexican Mafia. I was from the California Mexican Mafia. But we're talking about the Arizona mob versus the California mob, the real mob. And it's a long story, right? It's a long story. In fact, Mundo is more knowledgeable on me on this topic than I am. I went to him. I just confirmed some information with Mundo through a one of our close associates that keeps us in touch, and I had to check with him on some facts. So I never professed to be an expert on topics that I am not. So I know that the New Mexican Mafia in Arizona had beef with the organization, right? Uh, but I did a little research on this topic, and I wanted to bring in my experiences with this, right? My subjective experience, right? Because I don't want to go into something if I have no experience on it. That's just how I am. I mean, maybe I will in the future. We'll do some different kind of content, but for right now, I want to stick to what I know and stay in my lane. I think that's Uncensored's lane, right? So I pulled this up on Wikipedia. The first slide you see is uh, the Arizona Mexican Mafia symbol, with 13 flames pointing in one direction and 13 flames pointing in the other. And then the skull with the double M's and the black rose in the middle. I think the black rose is supposed to signify uh, eliminating somebody from the old Mexican Mafia. Before this thing even began in the 70s, it was called La Familia. Uh, that was the name of the organization, and they held sway in the ADOC, the Arizona Department of Corrections. But in the next slide, I just did a global search. Uh, and Arizona Mexican Mafia, also known as the New MA or the New Mexican Mafia, is a highly organized criminal syndicate and prison gang operating inside of Arizona Department of Corrections and across the state's communities. Originally formed in 1974 at the Arizona State Prison in Florence, it molded itself after notorious California Mexican Mafia, splintering into its own independent lethal entity. Key characteristics and leadership. The leader, Paul Eppinger, 64, is identified by federal and state authorities as the head of the organization, already serving a federal life sentence for racketeering, enterprise control, and drug trafficking. Eppinger recently pleaded guilty to a COVID-era fraud scheme. During that investigation, he formally confessed to orchestrating 5 unsolved cold case murders dating back to the 1990s. Structure and operations. The gang utilizes a democratic voting structure for its internal leadership and membership issues. It runs sophisticated networks inside and outside of prison walls, managing narcotics distribution, predominantly fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin, weapons trafficking and extortion, rivalries and alliances. Historically, the group has fought brutal internal turf wars with the original Mexican Mafia, the California faction, over who owns the rights to the Mexican Mafia name in Arizona. They maintain a fierce rivalry with the Border Brothers gang and have established loose strategic alliances with white supremacist gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood to maintain control of facility black markets. That's just AI. AI can tell you anything, right? It's not always accurate, and I don't know that. I don't even know who Paul Eppinger is, but that's what's depicted on Wikipedia, and we know that some of this is true. That there is a rivalry between the Mexican Mafia and the real Mexican Mafia and this new offshoot Mexican Mafia. Then I did a global on Mexican Mafia in Wikipedia, and I found this: the Mexican Mafia, the primary symbol used by the Mexican Mafia is the black hand, obviously. Oh, and by the way, that's my black hand on the first slide. That is the one that I guess gained prominence throughout all the depiction of the Mexican Mafia. That's probably the most recognized black hand there is. And I don't say that out of glamorization or anything like. I really don't. It's just used everywhere. I see it. Everybody use it. Media, everybody. So figure I might as well use my own tattoo, right? Everybody else is using it. Okay, so the primary symbol of the Mexican Mafia is the black hand. Founded in 1957. It's been 69 years ago. I don't know when this was written, so that could be off by a few years. The founder was Luis Huerta Flores. Founding location was the Dual Vocational Institution at Tracy, California, in the United States. Years active, 1957 to present. Territory is the West Coast and Southwestern United States and throughout the federal prison system and the California prison system. Ethnicity, Mexican American. That's wrong. That is absolutely wrong. I mean, the ethnic makeup of the organization. Look at guys like Richard Buchanan and a bunch of brothers. I did an episode on ethnic diversity in the organization, and it's there's really an eclectic mix of guys. And Mundo did one before me on ethnic diversity, and he knew guys like Hopple Mike and those guys that were Japanese and Korean. I think it was Mikey Nedaba, who was Korean, and Crazy Horse Lewis, who was Native American. So that is wrong. I think the premise is that it's Mexican, but those individuals who grow up in the Hispanic gang subculture and they act like homies, I mean, they get recognized like homies, and some of them, the down dudes, man, they merited membership. It doesn't really matter what ethnicity you are because even blacks, Chenano Jordan, and I believe there was one other Mexican Mafia member that was black. So it's an eclectic mix. Activities of the organization: drug trafficking, extortion, illegal gambling, prostitution, assault, and murder. Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. I mean, the prostitution part comes into the casitas, human trafficking. Mexican Mafia's into that now. They control casitas, and casitas have human trafficking. Let's face it. So the allies here is Armenian Power, Aryan Brotherhood, Gambino Crime Family, Hell's Angels, Independent Soldiers. Well, I've never heard of the organization being allies with the Gambino Crime Family or the Hell's Angels or the Independent Soldiers. Don't even know who they are. The Los Angeles Crime Family, never heard of them. Mexican and Me, no, they are not allies. The Mongols Motorcycle Club, they are not allies with the Mongols Motorcycle Club. MS-13, only West Coast MS-13 they are. The Sinaloa Cartel, yes. Sureños, yes. Tijuana Cartel, yes. BGF, no. Hells Angels Motorcycle Company, no. Norteños, no. Nuestra Familia, no. And Los Zetas, no. I never knew of any Cardenan or organized effort to make these individuals allies. Like it's been Sureños and AB all day long. Everybody else is considered maybe a person they know. But to have these kind of affiliations and to call them allies, absolutely not. In fact, they went to war with the Mongols. And the Mongols got treated pretty badly. They had the green light on them the whole 9 yards. And the feds, they're at war with MS, the Maras, right? They don't carry the 13. The MS that doesn't carry the 13, they're at war with them. And then notable members: Rodolfo Cadena, there's my name, Rene Enriquez, Jose Landa Tapia, oh freaking Uncle Fester rears his ugly head. Uncle Fester. And then Joe Pegleg Morgan. I guess, I mean, I wouldn't put myself in there. I would put like Cheyenne and Joe. They're very notable. you know. But I wouldn't have put myself and Uncle Fester in there. He's not very notable. I mean, I've done way more stuff than that guy, but I'm not bragging. It's just, is he notable because he gets everybody indicted? That's the question. He gets everybody indicted, and he don't care. And the thing is, he's going home. Like he wreaks all this havoc everywhere, destroys all these lives, and then gets to go home, which kind of sucks, right? For everybody that did his bidding and got washed up for it, right? All right. So the next thing I want to show is this clip from Prison Chronicles. Big props to Cricket. I'm going to show a brief clip here, and I think if you want the full details on this Arizona Mexican Mafia conflict, because there is a conflict, there is a war. They're not accepted by the California Mafia. They would get nailed here. They would get nailed to a cross. No problem. And the feds, they're allowed to walk with program on the yard, but they're not considered M. The Mexican Mafia, the original Mexican Mafia, is considered M, right? But let's listen to this brief clip from Prison Chronicles. And if you want to watch the full episode, it's on his channel. He's got a bunch of stuff on the Arizona Mafia. In fact, I wouldn't watch this just to familiarize, excuse me, familiarize myself with some of this stuff because again, this is not my lane. I just know what my experiences were, right? And I'm going to get to those in a second. But I kind of want to give you a little history, and no better guy to do it than Cricket. Here we go.
1979, an inmate by the name of Pete Moreno, also known as Pete Boy, entered the ADC, the abbreviation used for the Arizona Department of Corrections. Pete Boy was a made member of the California Mexican.
Let me stop that right now. Pete was not a made member of the Mexican Mafia. He was not a cardan when he went to Arizona Department of Corrections. And that's the first mistake right there. I'm not looking for mistakes either. This is an easy misconception. Because everybody thought Pete was a cardan because of his bona fides, right? Pete's got some serious bona fides. And I'm going to show you that right now. It's kind of unprecedented in the organization. Here we go.
Mafia, La M, and was arrested for murder in Maricopa County, convicted and sentenced to life in 1980. Many of the Arizona inmates were already familiar with an older Mexican Mafia member who predated Pete Boy by the name of Alvin Sanchez, also known as Manny from Temple.
I learned this in the writing the Mexican Mafia Encyclopedia. Like Mundo was popping out with facts that just amazed me. Like Mundo's a little encyclopedia in and of himself, right? And he just had these facts he was popping out with. I had never heard of Manny Alvin Sanchez. I never heard of that guy. And there was another individual he mentioned in the book, but I can't recall it right now, or I would have included it. But yeah, some of these facts they are not known to me, right? The only reason I knew about this was because Mundo included it in our book, the Mexican Mafia Encyclopedia, first and second editions. We'll continue with the video.
Pete Boy became friendly with members of La Familia who agreed with the idea of using the California Mexican Mafia template and formed an autonomous Arizona version. These prison convicts agreed to replace the name La Familia and refer to themselves as the Mexican Mafia.
Therein lies the conflict. Therein lies the conflict. So Pete was not a cardan. Pete was not a cardan. And this slide here, you're seeing Pete, an older Pete. He's older than this now. This picture's probably 15 years old. Pete Boy is the brother to the Moreno dynasty, right? But he wasn't a Mexican Mafia member and did not have the latitude to negotiate on behalf of the organization. In fact, Pete went to Arizona and made himself a cardan. He's a self-made man. You ever hear that phrase? He's a self-made man. Well, Pete's a self-made man. He went over there and declared himself a cardan, and it started a lot of controversy. Believe me, it started controversy because nobody's allowed to do that. Nobody. You can't go and claim to be a cardan if you're not a cardan. But that's exactly what he did. And he did so because of this. This next slide depicts his brothers. At the time, he had three brothers who were made cardanas. In fact, the first guy in the sunglasses is Eddie Boy. That's Eddie Boy Moreno. And he was Big Pelon. Big Pelon. and he was one of the founders of the organization. In fact, Mundo called him pound for pound one of the most dangerous men in the organization. Had a lot of juice. He ended up overdosing in San Quentin. I think it was on pills or something. I can't remember the facts, but Mundo included it in our book, The Mexican Mafia Encyclopedia. And this was the original Moreno brother that got into the Mexican Mafia in its inception. The next one was Jesse Pelon Moreno. In fact, when I went and did my elimination of David Gallegos, a Mexican Mafia member, on the streets when I got my commitment offense, I got the orders from Jesse Pelon Moreno, the guy depicted in the middle. And then there's Mike Moreno, Boo Boo. Everybody knows Boo Boo on the right. He was with me in Folsom State Prison, and laid back guy. I really like Mike. But those were Pete's brothers at the time, and and he got a lot of flack. There was cardenales coming out of the woodwork. Like, who is that guy? What's he saying he's a cardenal for? And one of the main opponents to this was Cuate. We'll get to him in a second. Later on, down the line, there was T-Bug. That's Thomas Moreno. Uh, that he's the newest addition to the Moreno clan, right? But he is also a made Mexican Mafia member. So that's five Mexican Mafia members from one family, all brothers. Like probably the most powerful dynasty. It was at one time. Now it's waning a bit because of the controversies created by T-Bug testifying in open court that he was a Mexican Mafia member in the trial of U.S. versus Loza et al., the cartoon case, and then Mike Moreno being, participating in some turf encroachments. Some say he's on disregard, some say he isn't. So the dynasty is waning, right? Remember I said all empires fall. All empires fall. The Moreno Empire is in the process of falling. You're seeing that happen now. I never would have thought in my wildest imagination that they would politic on Mike Boo. Mike Boo is the most easy, laid back, uh, kind, considerate. He's a kind and considerate guy. I mean, he's all about him and feeding his habit. I mean, that's a reality. But the guy I knew, a really, really cool dude. And I would never, in my wildest imagination, think that somebody would politic on him. But that's exactly what they did. And T-Bug still might face the music when he gets around the right people, having testified that he was from the Mexican Mafia, that he controls specific areas. I mean, just straight squealed on the stand. It doesn't make it any different if you're an active cardenal and you guys have discussed it and you think it's okay to do it. That's squealing. And that's what it is. I have those transcripts. I'll pop them up here at some point, and you guys are going to be amazed at what he testified to and the arrogance with which he testified to it too. So Pete's catching this flack, and the main promoter of this campaign against Pete in Arizona is this guy, Daniel Cuate Grajeda. And you know what I realized when I was constructing these slides for this recording was that Daniel Cuate Grajeda's tactics are exactly like Fox Tapia's, Uncle Fester. Yeah, Uncle Fester popped in our story again. Damn Uncle Fester. But Cuate would question the validity of anybody that got made. And that's exactly what he did to Pete Moreno. He questioned the veracity of his membership, and it was swirling around. And there was a group of us there at Pelican Bay State Prison who knew somebody who knew Pete, right? I even received correspondence from Pete. I received correspondence from Pete, B-Boy, or Petey Boy. He's got a couple different names. I received correspondence from Alacran. I even received correspondence from the Lechugas. The Lechugas, so we understand there's two factions. The old Mexican Mafia and then the new Mexican Mafia. Those are the Arizona guys, right? So I received correspondence from both sides. This is when all this was swirling. And I don't know why they picked me. And I think it's because Jaime Tinoco was there. We'll get to him in a minute. And that was a good friend of mine, Payaso from Corona. But Guata starts circulating all all these politics against B-Boy. He's not a cardenal. We're not going to recognize him. But Guata's always been a politiker. He's a dirty, dirty snake. There's no other way. There's no other way to call Cuate than a snake. He only devises ways to bring people down. That's all he's ever done. He's never done anything to promote a carnal, to help him, to boost him up, to save somebody's life. I've never seen him involved in that kind of campaign, not once. And he got his just dessert. He had cost a lot of people their lives, literally cost them their lives. And he got a taste of his own medicine when he got excluded. Him and his entire family, because the Grajeda dynasty, another dynasty of brothers made in the Mexican Mafia who happen to be blood brothers, Zenon Grajeda, uh, Thomas Grajeda, and Daniel Grajeda. In fact, Daniel and Thomas are identical twins, and Zenon is the younger brother. Yeah, their dynasty fell apart. Like I said, all dynasties fall. All dynasties fall. Why is the Mexican Mafia excluded from that? In the history of time, every dynasty has suffered and been negated and been defeated. And it's just a matter of time before the organization faces that. I don't know if it's going to be through some administrative policy change, which they're happening to do now, uh, but their dynasty will fall as well. So Daniel Grajeda, what a lot of people don't know is this: Daniel Grajeda himself, early on, caught politics. He caught politics because of this. In this picture, we're showing Daniel Grajeda with a tattoo La Rana. He's got a little M in between there and that diamond. You can see it. And he just looks evil. He is evil. He's an evil man. He's an evil man. I know him personally, and he's an evil man. But what a lot of people don't see in this picture is this close up. You see that cross on his left pectoral area? There's a cross scar underneath that. Daniel Grajeda did that himself with a knife. He did that himself, and certain cardenales were calling him suicidal. He was loaded, and he started carving on himself. It wasn't in a prison; it was on the streets. But they said this guy's suicidal. How did he even get made a cardenal? He caught flack for this, believe it or not. So Daniel Grajeda was no lily, believe it. But he knew the tactics of politicking, and he was launching this campaign against Pete B-Boy Moreno. But then, in the graphics I'm showing you now, that's Mark Iquitos right there. That's a young Mark Iquitos with hair. This is years back. This is 2002, right? There's older ones where he's balding, and I just thought I'd use a younger one of him. And then there's old catfish lips in the middle. Look at him. It looks like that's the sound in his head or coming out of his mouth. He does not look like a sharp, intelligent mobster. He never has. And then the last picture, the baldy guy, is Chaco Padilla. Chaco Padilla used to be my buddy, right? Until he wasn't. But these guys started corresponding with me. I'm in 2904 in High Power. I just did the Mon hit, the Buenostro hit in LA County Jail. So I'm completely isolated. Guate's gone. Joe's gone. I'm kind of like the senior guy there. There's nobody else there at this point in time. So they contact me about Petey Boy, right? Uh, and that we should recognize him as a carnal. And I said, yeah, sure. And this is all the kind of like all the younger brothers lined up in this, and then I agreed to it. Like, yeah. I mean, just for Mike's sake and for Jesse's sake. Jesse Pelon Moreno, I met him on the streets. I went to his house. He went to my house. That's just the way it was. I knew him, and my loyalty is with the Moreno. So I wasn't gonna let Guate, try to eliminate Pete or put any politics on him, and that's why they contacted me initially. But immediately after, this guy came up here. This next slide is Jaime Tinoco. That's Payaso from Corona. In fact, I met Payaso in San Quentin in 1982. We were kids. And I remember he and Sleepy La Salette from Mission Street or Mission District in San Francisco went and eliminated an NF guy by the name of Diamond from Sacramento. He had been on the main line. In fact, I went to a family visit with Diamond. We were out there. This was back when it was loose. Just 8 trailers out there, and everybody can roam, have barbecues together, go in each other's trailers. There were no restrictions. There were no restrictions, and a lot of wild stuff was happening out there, believe you me. But I went to a family visit with Diamond, and we were kicking it out there. We were talking and smoking cigarettes, smoke breaks, all that stuff. Seemed like a good guy. And this was at a time when Norteños could walk the line with us, and they did. because it really wasn't that norteño, sureño beef, right? It was NF beef. That's how it started. But Haas, Big Haas from Clanton, Bill Frisbee, ID'd him as a Nuestra Familia member. And he said, Sleepy La Salette and Payaso here, depicted in this picture, always squatting down in the khaki pants and the white shirt, on a mission to eliminate him. Uh, and this is a story when I told you that they eliminated this guy, and the last thing Payaso saw was when they pulled him out of the cell, he was deceased and he had an erection. And it was the weirdest thing. Payaso said, like, it's the weirdest thing I ever saw. Like, the guy is completely butchered, but he has an erection. And one of the viewers told me what it was. It's called postmortem priapism. I gotta look up the word. I know what it is, but it's a traumatic thing that happens, particularly in head injuries and postmortem, right? Where male bodies get an erection. I guess it's the last hoorah. But so Marky Quiros and Old Catfish Lips and Jaco Padilla, they contact me about Jaime Tinoco. He was my buddy. Like I had spent time with him at Palm Hall after San Quentin, and we kicked it. He was doing a violation. I was doing a violation right before I caught my two murder charges. And he was my buddy. I known that guy since we were kids together, right? In fact, I got in the boxing ring with him once. We only had two gloves. He had a left hand, I had a right hand. And we went in there and started slugging each other in the boxing ring. And and it was funny, man, because he caught me with a good one. I saw lights. It was just like some wild haymaker that he hit me with. I was like, oh, shoot. The guy almost knocked me out with one glove. And then I'd start wailing on him. He started wailing back, and it was it. And then we got out of the ring, and it's okay, cool. And a really easygoing guy. He paroled. I actually went to Ironwood uh, some years ago, and Jaime was there. James Dinoco was there. And he actually achieved parole. He got paroled from there. And he sent me a message, to keep hope up and all that stuff. And I really appreciated it. But it saddened me, too. It saddened me that I didn't get to see him. But he's living his life now, his best life. But they contact me because they want to sponsor this guy now. He had first hooked up with the Lechugas. There was a faction there called the Lechugas, the old Mexican Mafia and the new Mexican Mafia joined up in this conflict between each other. Jaime Tinoco was embroiled in it. He was running with the enemies at first until Marky Quiros and Widow Sherman Jocko contacted him and told him, hey, bro, you got to back Pete. Pete is a carnal, and everybody with Pete are real carnales. Those other guys are fakes. And so that they started calling them lechugas. I don't know why the term lechuga came out, but that's what they called them. And and I would get letters from this guy Alacran and Pete, and they would refer to lechugas, and I would ask like, what the hell is a lechuga? So Payaso wrote me and explained everything, um, and they made him. They made him a carnal. We gave our blessing. We supported him completely, and it was accepted both by California and that new Arizona faction, Pete's faction, right? That was the self-made man, Pete Moreno. Years later, um, I'm in the shoe, and they come hit my house. I mean, they come gangbusters, IGIs, SSU. They come take everything out of me and Tecolote and Idol cell. They took everything out of our cell, like everything. We had nothing in that cell. They boxed it up and they took it off. They hauled it off, and we're sitting around like, what's up? And they just keep telling us they'll return your property when they're done. Little did we know that Payaso, the individual depicted here, was involved in a plot to eliminate the director of corrections along with some other guys, right? I don't know how real it was, but I did a global search again just based on that topic, and I came up with this. Chief of Corrections nearly killed. Associated Press, December 29th, 1998. Three former inmates are under arrest for allegedly plotting to kill the state corrections director in retaliation for his get tough policy towards gangs. An attempt on his life was apparently foiled only because of the chance appearance of two officers moments before the shooting was to happen. An informant told police two gunmen were reaching inside their clothing for weapons when the officers walked into the restaurant where Corrections Department Terry Stewart was dining. Police spokesman Mike McCullough said today, I owe my life to the Phoenix Police Department and, if you will, serendipity, and the fact the two officers walked in right at the very moment that these individuals had decided to assassinate me, Stewart told KFYI Radio. This had reverberations all over. Once the Arizona Department of Corrections director was, or secretary, I don't know what his title, his director, excuse me. Once he was targeted by the Arizona Mafia that's affiliated with the California Mafia, we started feeling the heat. Like they took all our stuff, they x-rayed it, they scanned it, they read every piece of paper. Maybe 4 or 5 days later, they brought it back. And I never knew what it was about. Like, I never figured it out. I just thought they were searching us. And they did it to my cell, I think Jocko's cell, Widow Sherm's cell, and anybody who had been in contact with Payaso from Corona. And it was years later during my debrief that I was speaking to a special agent. He says, oh, we did that to see if you had any communication or anything to do with the conspiracy to eliminate the director in the Department of Corrections. And I said, what are you talking about? And they explained it to me. I said, wow, I didn't even know that was going on. So I had dealings with these guys, right? And I know which ones are accepted. Which ones are accepted by the organization. In fact, like there's an agreement that members of the new Mexican Mafia, not part of Pete Moreno's faction, that entirely different faction, are allowed to walk the yards in the BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons. That comes straight from Mundo. They are not accepted as MM members, though. In fact, they associate more with Sureños, and they're part of that car. But they're not considered cardenales. I would think if they started recruiting and they started showing too much muscle, the cardenales would have them eliminated. But they're allowed to function there. They're allowed to function there. And nobody's actually whacking them or anything like that. Not from the M. There's another faction entirely different than that wouldn't be accepted there. And I think there's a few of those. But I will refrain from comment because, like, again, I am not an expert in this stuff. I just know these are my involvements with it, right? I had personal dealings with Jaime and Alacran and Pete and his brothers and Cuate. And all this stuff swirled around this Arizona Mafia being formed. Like, there was a big resistance. Like, no, we don't recognize those guys. And that was Cuate mainly. But I recognize the Moreno brothers as my cardenales. And if it's cardenales up there in Arizona, and they're blessing him as a cardenal, which they never did. Pete did it on his own. That's the reality. We hid that fact. But just to get him accepted for the Moreno brothers, because we like the Moreno brothers. But all this was swirling at one time in Pelican Bay. It was swirling around. It was a hotbed of political activity, right? So there's a huge controversy that existed back at that time. And the next time I heard about the new Arizona Mexican Mafia was when this guy popped up, Sundance from Arizona. I actually got pulled out by Riverside County Sheriffs after he eliminated a highway patrolman and a store clerk in Blythe, right by the prison. Right by the prison. He had eliminated a highway patrol officer and then, using the officer's gun, eliminated the store clerk. And they came to me for the penalty phase of his case. Actually, the guilt phase and the penalty phase. They wanted me to testify in it. And they asked me if I knew him. I never met this guy. I never saw him before. And I think he's the first guy to ever be made from Arizona, the Arizona clique. Somebody said that they sponsored him. There was a lot of controversy. I remember hearing that he was on disregard. Camaradas wouldn't listen to him. But he was in Riverside County Jail calling shots. But he was deemed no good immediately after. They determined he was no good. immediately thereafter. So he was a flash in the pan. I would think that some cardenas wouldn't even consider him a carden. That might have been the case, that somebody put him up. He might have passed a preliminary vote, but after further review, somebody like, nah, this is not happening. He's no good. And he's on the outs now. I don't know if he received the death penalty or not. I know he was fighting the death penalty because it was a special circumstances case. But this is the only guy I know to come from Arizona and have some semblance of acceptance by the organization in California. So I read this about him. Cop killer who gunned on a Blythe store clerk during a 24-hour two-state crime spree has been convicted of first-degree murder and other charges, making him eligible for a second death sentence. In fact, he does have a death sentence. He had one that existed prior to that. Death and tragedy. A Riverside jury deliberated 3 days before finding Ernesto Salgado Martinez guilty Monday of the slaying of 43-year-old Randip Singh using a handgun that belonged to an Arizona highway patrolman, whom the defendant shot dead the same day. Along with the murder count, jurors found true special circumstances allegations of killing during a robbery and taking multiple lives. However, the panel acquitted Martinez of attempted murder in connection with a knife attack on a fellow jail inmate last year. That is my extent of knowledge on the Arizona Mafia. Those were my dealings, right? Like, I was interviewed about this guy. They wanted me to come to the penalty phase of his trial. I knew Jaime Tinoco. I knew all the players involved with getting Pete and Jaime recognized in that faction of the organization, recognized as part of the California, and they are a part of the California. They just happen to be in Arizona, right? So the federal faction, the state faction, California, the Arizona faction, they're all California immigrants. It's just, they just happen to be, even when they had Cardenas, so they had a Hawaiian faction. There were 3 Cardenas in Hawaii. They were considered part of the organization. They were a California organization. They call it the Hawaiian faction. And some people dispute that now, but it really is. It was a faction, right? Look up the sheer definition of the word faction and you'll see what it was. It was multiple members in another state establishing themselves and as an organized crime syndicate, right? And that's what they did. It wasn't a vacation. They lived there. So that became their home base. But this guy never panned out, this guy, Sundance. So I wanted to give you that knowledge about the organization. Part of those guys, part of that one, the new Mexican Mafia in Arizona is allowed to walk the general population yard with BOP inmates, the Sureños. They are not walking the yard in California. That agreement doesn't exist here. It doesn't exist in California. I've never heard about it. It may exist somewhere, but I've never heard about it. So that'll do it, folks. I hope you like this different content about the Arizona Mafia and the controversies that swirled around getting those members accepted. We'll continue with some more novel stuff for you guys. Hope you enjoy this. As always, hype the video, folks. Leave a comment. Hit that thumbs up. And as always, stay safe. Peace out.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Boots.